Welcome back to the show. We're here today with Mark Redgewell and Ian McTavish, and we're talking about love and peace. Welcome back to the show, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So two very intertwined topics of compassion and love, or peace and love, and yet you're lawyers. So tell me about that. Tell me about how that topic relates to what you do.
Well, for myself, I think there's a need for more discussion and more understanding of how love can influence all of society and therefore have a very beneficial effect on all of our systems in society, and we happen to work in the justice system. It's not discussed very often in the justice system amongst lawyers. As a matter of fact, I'd probably venture a guess that most lawyers would sort of brush you off pretty quickly if you started talking. They're not familiar with it. So that's, for me, it's something that I think we need to open up all spheres and social areas for that discussion.
Mark, how are you doing it in your work?
Well, just to add briefly to what Ian just said as well, as part of that conversation, our legal system is based on punishment. You know, the entire thing is based on punishment. It's not just adversarial, but you know, if you do wrong, whether it's a police officer, if they get disciplined, they can get fired, and it's the opposite of love. And you know, what you feed, you know, what you water gets stronger. In Aboriginal spirituality, they talk about how in every individual there's a good dog and a bad dog, and it's our system of punishment. It views justice and it views accountability from a punishment lens, and that just causes more harm to individuals. Whereas, for example, the Aboriginal view of justice is healing. So the way that I'm trying to practice it in my practice is, first of all, to really just try to rehumanize my interactions with my clients. You know, talk to them as I would a family member or a friend. You know, it's again coming back to what Ian was saying, that we're all one cell of the fabric of life, or in Aboriginal concept, you know, all my relations, we're all related. And to act like that. And then, of course, specifically, one of the things that I'm trying to create is I'm trying to create a volunteer peacemaking program in prisons, where I can work with prisoners and staff who are interested, and I want to involve staff in it, but my primary focus is to empower prisoners and support prisoners and model for prisoners how to approach conflicts with staff in prison from love and compassion and understanding. So to be loving and compassionate and understanding to, you know, to the person that they view as being this punitive, controlling, authoritative person who's creating misery in their life.
Now, when you think of the word lawyer, you have a specific persona in mind, right? You know, or you have an assumption of what a lawyer's personality would depict. Now, both of you are presenting a pretty unique view of what that looks like and how you're using your personal journeys to change that persona. What do you think your colleagues are thinking that would watch this show?
That's funny. You know, I think most of them would relate to it. I think there's a high degree of dissatisfaction in the legal profession. It's a very stressful occupation. Other people depend upon us and the advice we give, and they depend upon us for doing our job, which makes and brings the stress to us. So what Mark said about rehumanizing his practice, I think is key. And I think a lot of firms are doing that. And I'm aware of movements in the United States, for instance, where they're teaching through the law societies, the organizational bodies for lawyers in different states of the United States, mindfulness meditation, so that you can take a step back. And what I do on a daily basis, well, I do my meditation practice daily, but I also have done things such as simple things like introducing music to my office, introducing art and putting that in my office, bringing flowers to my office, giving free consultations to people so that they don't feel that I'm just out there for the money. And so what I'm trying to do is exactly the same as Mark in a maybe a slightly different way, in the sense that I want people to feel that this system is not foreign to them. They are part of that system, just like they are a single cell in the body of life. And I'm trying to do it in the only way I can do it. I don't have as much energy as Mark. He's a youngster, and I don't think I could take on as much as him, but it's fun.
Okay. Mark, what are your thoughts?
Similar to Ian, I think most people I talk about this all the time to everyone. And I think most lawyers, most prisoners that I talk to, not all of them, and a lot of staff I talk to really resonate with what we're talking about. And people are ready for change. Lawyers are ready for change. It's just a matter of how do we do it, you know, and figuring that out. And also, you know, in the last month, I've met with 2 wardens of 2 different federal institutions to talk about this. And one of the things that I discovered is they are actually trying to do a lot of this stuff already. They are already creating their informal resolution programs, they're trying to bring restorative justice into the institutions, not just between the offenders and their victims, but between the prisoners, the inmates, and the staff, and between staff and staff. And again, it's a difficult task because of the culture, but I think it's the direction that we're going in. Even though, like from the other perspective, is with the Conservative government pushing a law and order agenda, they're pushing more punishment. And a lot of lawyers I know, for example, especially in prison law, they're very alarmed and frightened about what's happening in our prisons and what's going to happen. And they're afraid that we're going to return to darker days of more riots, more hostage takings. And yet, you know, in terms of what they would say, I think what some of those lawyers would say is, well, that's all well and good, but, you know, it's not going to happen. And actually, I get that when I talk about peace in prisons. I get, well, certain types of people become prison guards, you know, and, you know, it's not going to happen. And the government's, I get all these, there's all these reasons as to why. And I think it's because people have just sort of given up hope about that. But hope is still there. It's just about having these conversations.
What is the list that encompasses the why it should be done versus the why it can't be done? So what is your list of stuff that says we need more peace in the justice system, we need more peace in the prison system, and these are the reasons why? What are the reasons?
Well, the primary reason is, you know, and it's a reason that every person, no matter what their view, what their political view, or what their view of the criminal justice system can relate to, it's public safety. You know, we put people in an environment and expose them to really unhealthy relationships. They model for each other really unhealthy relationships. We give them programs which are often used to sort of determine whether they're going to get out or not. So it's really hard to engage in it with a trusting and open heart. And regardless of how good those programs are, whether it's about nonviolent communication or you know, a high intensity violence prevention program, they go back into this environment where it's very separate, it's very adversarial, and there's not a lot of love, and there's not a lot of kindness and respect. Well, I say that, and even as I'm saying that, there's probably more there.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you can have 80% of the people being fairly respectful and 20% being really harsh, and that's going to feed that negativity, and that's going to feed that anger. And so you can really have a, you know, 10 or 20%, you know, driving the bus in the wrong direction.
Look at Canada. We're ruled by a government that has basically a minority of people that support it within this country. It happens throughout. I mean, the environment in the prisons is crucial because there is a prisoner's code. And once you go into prison, you become very familiar with that code. And a lot of people then don't engage in society and become normal members of the communities in which they live. So I think that our systems haven't really worked all that well from the viewpoint of reintegrating and reducing recidivism, bringing people into the community in which they choose to live. And that is something I think programs that Mark is trying to establish within the prisons, a mindfulness meditation program, for instance. It's worked in India. One of the largest, most notorious prisons in India, and I can't remember the name right now, introduced Vipassana meditation in the prison. They found a marked decrease in recidivism. So that's a program that we aren't doing across the country as uniformly as perhaps we could be, at very little cost and with great benefits. So you have to ask yourself why. And Mark's comment regarding our system being one where we punish, it's never worked. You know, the judges and we all talk about making an example of you. You've got to, I can't remember the term right now, but you've got to make sure that you show an example when you're sentencing an individual so nobody else will perform the same acts in the future. It's never worked. You know, if you're dysfunctional going into some situation, you're going to make the same mistake as somebody else made. We're just human beings. And so to become more aware is really key, and that's what I think the programs, meditation programs within prisons would be absolutely ideal.
Let's go for a break. We'll be right back after this.
Just about everyone in prison is going to get out someday. There's very few people that will actually stay in prison. And if we want communities to be safer, then we do have to make that transition.